Hello, everybody. This is Barry Draycott with Terra Environmental, and thank you for joining us on our ongoing series on how to, be eco-friendly and maintaining landscapes. Tonight's presentation is with Bill Skerrett. He is the founder and owner of ICT Organics. I've known Bill for close to 20 years or so. We bumped into each other when I was learning about the soil food web. And from there, we talked a lot, and he's, like I said, he's developed a whole line of minimum risk pesticides that work really well without having all the harmful effects on the ecosystem. So, Bill, thank you very much for joining us, and why don't you get started?
Sounds good. Am I on?
You are.
Awesome. ICT Organics was started in 2007. And like he said, the soil food web, I saw a talk by Elaine Ingham back in 2006, and it just blew my mind about compost tea and diversity. And so one of our first products that we came out with was our instant compost tea. As I went around the country and talked to different landscapers, they were talking about having to scale compost tea, and after you get over 100 customers or so, it's pretty hard to scale. So we came up with an instant compost tea that has 26 different microorganisms in it, fungi and bacteria. It's a bacterial dominant compost tea, and you just mix it in a tank and spray. So it made it much easier for landscapers to be able to scale their organic fertilizing, but to keep density and color in turf, it works really well. Typically used in the late part of the season, June, July, August kind of thing. But we've been around for a while. Barry's been a great distributor for us. All of our products are available through Barry. And one thing I always move people to Barry is because he's got a real diverse set of product lines. So he can fix whatever you're trying to get done. He's got different things to be able to do it with. Some of the things we're going to go through this evening is you may be familiar or not with chitin and chitosan. We have a new product out based on chitosan called ChitoCure. We're going to go through the science and chemistry, why it works, some of the applications. There's a disease called beech leaf disease, which is terrible for animals to lose the beeches because they really depend on the nuts for the animals. And then we'll go through the product line. If you're not familiar with it, we'll go through the product line. So it'll probably take 20, 30 minutes tops. If you have any questions, please chime in, let me know. So chitin is what we get our chitin from is shrimp shells. Chitin is in your fingernails, it's in your hair. You actually produce chitinase enzymes, plants do too. So chitosan is the liquid form. So what we do is we get chitin from shrimp shells, and it's in a solid form, typically very fine powder. And then what we do is we go through a process of weak acids in order to make that into a liquid form. Chitosan and chitin have been around for quite a while, but plants make their cells from calcium and fungi make their cells from chitin, which is interesting. The EPA just recently ruled chitosan as a 25B exempt active ingredient. It had been up until they started the National Organic Program in 1992. In 2004, they reviewed it and took it off. Well, they just put it back on as a 25B exempt active ingredient. You could use it as an inert before, but you couldn't use it as an active. So our ChitoCure product that we're going to talk about is National Organic Program compliant, so it can be used in organic growing. And 25B exempt means that in a lot of states like New York, you can, and Connecticut, you can use this pesticide without having to notify the neighborhood or the, if you're spraying it in a school, you don't have to notify the school and all the people that are in the school that you're using it. So 25B exempt, the EPA uses a term called GRAS, which is called generally regarded as safe. So that's what this product has. And a lot of the states allow 25B exempt pesticides to be used in places where you could never use a pesticide, or where you have to notify neighbors or schools or whoever you're going to spray in. It's biodegradable. Chitosan is non-toxic. It's actually like the largest form of out there. I think cellulose is the largest form. Chitin and chitosan are the second largest form of nutrient. This is a review. One thing we're going to talk about is about chitinase enzymes too. So not only is there chitin and chitosan, but there are also chitinase enzymes. And we'll talk about that, which is pretty fascinating. So we all talk about the soil and soil health, and there are how many gazillion bacteria and fungi are in a teaspoon of soil. And basically, it's a war down there. Everybody's trying to eat everyone else because they're all hungry. So bacteria in the right environment, they can double their numbers in 20 minutes. So you can get a huge bloom of bacteria all producing enzymes in order to break down whatever food that's there. So if you were to spray chitosan on the ground, basically the bacteria and fungi are going to use that as food. The bacterial numbers will zoom up, and what they're doing is they're producing chitinase enzymes in order to break that food down into something that they can eat. Both bacteria and fungi produce chitinase enzymes in order to attack and eat. There's one out there called trichoderma. They leave 2 holes in a fungi if you look at it through a microscope, and they were named the vampire fungi. And what they do is they use chitinase enzymes in order to make that entrance into the fungi, and then they suck all the good stuff out of the fungi. Trichoderma fungi is used in a lot of different places as a pesticide for fungal disease. It's also something if you grow mushrooms, it's something you do not want in your mushroom house. So they take great strides in order to clean up and sterilize the mushroom growers to make sure that there's no trichoderma that's in there. And fungi can produce up to 20 different types of chitinase enzymes. You'll see why we're talking about this in a moment. Chitosan is really quite an interesting product. It's used in weight loss. It's used in wastewater treatment systems in order to settle out different things. That's why you'll see a note coming up is when you mix our Chitocure product, only mix up enough to use for 24 hours, because it will settle out in the bottom of the tank, and often it's hard to get out. It's used in cosmetics. It's used, we actually sell quite a bit of product to out west for aerial sprays, and they use it with pesticides as an adjuvant for non-drift applications for typically herbicides. One of the interesting things about chitosan, there are lots of them, but it's also a plant growth enhancer. And we'll get into some of the things that it does to a plant. But it actually stimulates, the plant thinks that it's under attack by a pathogen. And so what it does is it stimulates enzymes, metabolites in order to defend itself. So not only is it what you'll see is a fungicide, it's also a bactericide, it's also a nematicide, but it also produces this ability for the plant to defend itself. Here's a slide that I've used for years, and this is a bell pepper after 4 days. So they've got on the left is a control, and on the right is chitosan. So they've sprayed, and I forget that it's something like 250 parts per million, which is about a ½ ounce per gallon kind of thing. So in the control, you can see that there's empty space in between the cell walls, where 4 days later, the plant has filled those cell wall, those empty spaces in, so that the fungi can't get in there. And then it's also increased the space between, it's filled in all the spaces, so to block the fungi. It also thickens the cell wall so it can't enter the leaf of the plant. And it also fills in with what they call block penetrations. So when you spray chitosan on a plant, it thinks it's under attack. And so what it does is it does all of these things to defend itself. So not only is it a curative fungicide, but it's also an excellent preventative fungicide. This is in bell peppers. I can find lots of research on things that you make a lot of money off of. Strawberries for Boetris, they use chitosan on. For green peppers like this one, corn, you name it, because they're all agriculture crops that make a lot of money. But turf and landscape doesn't make a lot of money for scientists, so it's hard to find a lot of research on turf. This is a National Library of Medicine. This is a chitosan for plant protection article, and I just gleaned part of that information from the article. But what it talks about is its antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal properties and how safe it is. And then it goes on to cite all of the different papers that are out there that are all peer-reviewed on whatever cytoplasmic acidification is. But it talks about how plants respond to chitosan, and it doesn't matter what type of plant it is, but it all induces this systemic acquired resistance that happens in plants. In fact, I was just out at my farm yesterday, and we have a fungal disease on our one of the apple trees. It's very obvious. And so we cut off the places where it was really bad, and then sprayed the tree. And I took some pictures, and I forgot to put it in the slide, but you can see the leaf of the tree yesterday had all these black dots all over it from the spores from the fungal disease. Today you go back, all the black spots are gone. There's still spots, but they're brown, and all the fungal disease has gone away. It won't repair those black spots or brown spots, but it does stop the spread of the fungal disease. This is as an antimicrobial. This is actually out of an EPA review of chitosan. Again, chitosan was an active ingredient from 1992 to 2004. Then they took it out because of some of the ways that it was being deacetylized. But they put it back in as of January this year. But it talks about antimicrobial. And then we talk about it as a nematicide. So what's interesting about chitosan is it hydrolyzes chitin. It actually turns it to water. So if you were to spray it onto a mushroom that's out there, it doesn't work well on slime molds, and there are some fungi that it doesn't do well with, but with most fungal things that we deal with in the landscaping industry, it works really well. And it's basically a contact fungicide. So with chitosan, because nematodes have chitin in their exoskeleton, what the chitosan does is it disrupts that membrane on the outside, and they just lose water and die. It also works on their eggs because they're also coated with chitosan. So you're killing adults as well as the eggs when you have an outbreak of nematodes. If there are any golf course people out there, they fight nematodes all the time. We actually did, and you'll see a slide coming up, we actually did a thing for organic bananas down in Mexico, where they had a terrible nematode problem. We actually used a fungi to fix that. And we made up a fungi soup, and they sprayed it all over and really got good control of the nematodes that were in the soil. It's cost effective. It's typically, our product is much cheaper, a quarter of the cost of some of the ones that are out there. And it also, one of the things down at the bottom, if you look, it's effective against a variety of nematodes. Root knot, they're hard to get to once they get in the root, but there are some really great carrot studies that are out there on how, and potato studies on how it controls the nematode population. Gastrointestinal nematodes. This is in livestock. So as cows go out and they eat the grass, they're eating nematodes. They get into their stomach and they don't process food very well because the nematodes are eating up all their food. So they start losing weight, and people scratch their head and don't know what's going on, but they actually feed chitosan to livestock that have gastrointestinal nematodes. Our product ChitoCure, which is coming out, is a 2% chitosan. The pricing is $95 per gallon. This is actually a product made for some national tree companies. Once they asked us to find an organic solution to what we're going to talk about, which is the beech leaf disease. We did some research. We've been working with chitosan for years. So they came to us because they knew that. And we've come up with a product specifically as a nematicide. And it's labeled as a nematicide. And again, it's EPA exempt. The way we make our product, it's also National Organic Program compliant. So this can be used in growing organic crops, like carrots or potatoes or anything else, green peppers like we saw in one of the last slides. And do not mix more than can be used in 24 hours. It will settle out and get in the bottom of your tank and can be quite difficult to get out because it kind of solidifies and it's hard to get out. The only other inerts in there is water and vinegar. There are some other products on the West Coast that use chitosan in agriculture, and they're well over $300 a gallon. So what happens is what I was talking about before was these negatively charged, it disrupts the membrane. It hydrolyzes chitin on contact. It's also a powerful chelator of metal ions, which also can disrupt the fungal cell membranes. So we've got antifungal application. We've got our nematode application, and it's also great on bacteria. There's actually, I've met one of the consultants that we use in our business for a guy named Bill Pate. He took a company and sold it. And what the guy had done was found a way to make chitosan into blocks. So he was making it at about a 15, at 2%, it's like honey almost, how it comes out. I've tried to make a 6%. At 10%, you need a spoon to get it out. And almost at 6%, you need a spoon to get it out. But he had made blocks of chitosan and patented it. And they use that in the military as well as all of the police departments for bullet wounds. So if somebody's hit by a bullet, one of the first things they do is they put this 4x4 patch on the wound, and it's coated with chitosan. And so what it does is it's the antifungal, antibacterial, plus it helps in stopping the bleeding as well. So and I think he sold it for $78 million or something. But it's a very interesting product. So this talks about ChitoCure, our product, and how chitosan is applied. Typical application is applied till a spray till drip. So it's hard to come up with a application rate like you would with something else, where you say 2 gallons per 1,000 or something like that. So it's really a spray till drip kind of thing. You just want contact with that. If you're using it, we'll talk about it in a few. If you're using it for grubs, the application needs to be watered in, so it can get down there where the grubs are. Grubs also have chitin in their exoskeleton. And so just like any other fungi, this breaks down the exoskeleton. We've actually had people call us and say that they had applied our product, our NPP product, and grubs were literally climbing out of the ground to get away from it. And we'll talk a little bit about why that happens. I love this slide. This is what I had to put it in there just because I love it. But what we did with the bananas, organic bananas in Mexico, was we mixed up a group of these fungi. And what they do is they've got really interesting, they use the nematodes as food. So, but they've got interesting ways. They'll trap them like this, where they'll put all these little loops out. And then when the nematode comes in, they basically pull the string and trap it. They've got sticky stuff. There are all kinds of different ways that they trap nematodes and use them for food, which is pretty interesting. But nematodes are pretty small. You need a microscope in order to see them. I don't think it's on here, but it's something like, that's a very small size that they're got this camera on. Let's talk a little bit about Beech Tree Disease. I should say Beech Tree Leaf Disease. This is something that started in Ohio. It was the first time that they saw it in 2012. It's now spread to all over the place. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But beech trees are very important to animal survival because of the nuts that they make. They're also a beautiful tree to have in your yard. And there are a lot of specimen trees that are out there, and the tree guys are scratching their head trying to figure out what to do about this without. So what we've come up with is our ChitoCure product as a nematicide. And you'll find I've got some research that's here. I took some things off of, New Hampshire, Maine, New Jersey, Michigan, Ohio. If you look at any of the departments, pesticide departments, and look for beech leaf disease, everybody's very concerned about this. Some of the forests out there, like my farm in Delaware, it's probably 25% beech trees. And some of the figures that I was looking at is they can be as high as 50% beech trees in the Northeast, but they're often 20 to 25% of the trees that are there. It can kill all trees of all ages. The younger trees seem to die more quickly. The older mature trees can die in 2 to 7 years. I've seen 2 to 4 years in some research. They couldn't figure out what was going on. They thought it was a soil-borne fungus or some kind of fungus that was going around. Actually, there are fungus associated with this disease and also bacteria, but it's mostly the nematodes. What was surprising about that is nematodes are typically found in the soil, and they're typically feeding on the exudates that are coming off of the tree roots. These are found on the leaf, the actual leaf of the tree, and they were pretty surprised by that. Some of the research that's just come out, they thought it was just the nematode, but now they've found 3 different fungi that appear in almost every case, and 3 or 4 different bacteria. So it's almost like the nematodes have teamed up with fungi and bacteria, and they like beech trees for some reason. So it's a real concern. It's a vital source for bears, deer, all kinds of animals that are out there. There's actually a rare butterfly that feeds off of the beech tree. But mostly the tree services are worried about the specimen trees that are in people's yards, because they're getting called in and they're trying to control this thing and they don't have anything to control it with. And you can spray, chemicals, but most of these guys have been in Barry's classes, in Elaine's classes, in a lot of classes, realizing that that these things are really dangerous. Chemical pesticides can be really dangerous. And a lot of people don't want, we get calls, probably 3 or 4 calls a month from people saying, I've been spraying pesticides for fill in the blank, 10 years, 5 years, 20 years. And I don't want to be around it anymore. And I don't want my people around it. What have you got for us? So, and beech trees can live for 400 years, which I didn't know about, but it's all around us. It's in Jersey, Delaware, Maryland. I just saw another thing where it's in West Virginia and Virginia as well. But there's a map coming up that shows where it started and where it's going. What does it look like? We saw the leaves on that one slide when we started talking about BLD, and it's got dark bands between leaves. We're coming up on another slide talking about look-alike diseases. So one of the big things about beech leaf disease is the veins of the leaf. So if you hold the leaf up to the sun, if you look down on it, you can't really see them, but if you look up into the light, you can definitely see the bands that are there. And these tree companies are looking for a way to take care of it. Premature leaf drop. I've seen pictures of huge mature trees that are, 90% of their leaves are gone. And one of the studies said it can kill them in 2 to 4 years. I've also heard the 7 years, but still you're losing huge swaths of beautiful trees. And there's the name of the nematode. I pulled this off of one of the state sites. There are also 3 different types of fungi and bacteria that are associated with this. So a chitosan-based product is perfect, as it can kill the bacteria, the fungi, and it also induces SAR, systemic acquired resistance, for the plant. So the plant, and it starts beefing up all those things. And you saw in that one slide where It fills in all the areas. It gets a thicker cuticle, so it really braces itself for a pathogen that's coming in. That's what the nematode looks like. That was a site, I think that was a Michigan site that I got that off of. But they're very small, they're microscopic. It's really difficult to see them in the field without some type of magnification because they look just like everything else that's around there. And what's hard to believe is that these things just, they first couldn't understand what are nematodes doing up in 40 feet up in the air in trees. It just didn't make sense to anybody at first. But they've done some really nice work. There's a map of the spread over there by Lake Erie where it's white. That was 2012. That was the first time it was spotted. One of the interesting things in the New York site was it was marching east from Ohio, and then suddenly it showed up in Long Island. And they think that's because it was transportation of wood. Is that somebody wanted to make a bowl or furniture or something, and they had transported the nematodes to Long Island, and it suddenly showed up in Long Island. But it's marching north and south very quickly. And you can see all the counties that have reported. It doesn't show Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, or West Virginia in this, but this was probably 2021 information. It has a scent spread down through those states. Oh, this was off the Michigan site, because it's starting to move into Michigan as well. Here are some of the look-alike diseases. There's anthracnose, which everybody's familiar with because it's destroying our oh God, I can't think of the name. It's destroying a lot of, I'll think of it in a minute. But dogwoods, it's really wiping out the dogwoods. I talked to DNR guy, gosh, a couple of years ago, and he said in Maryland and the vicinity in 20 years, we won't have any dogwoods left from anthracnose. But what you can do is if you put the leaf up to the sun, you can see those bands in there. But those are some of the look-alike diseases, and a lot of the pesticide folks in all the different states are trying to, in their presentations that I've seen, they're trying to educate everybody so that they're not calling in saying, hey, I've got beech leaf disease, when it's really anthracnose or powdery mildew or some type of patch from fungal disease or mites. Those damn mites. We get so many calls about how to control mites in cannabis grows. It's tough to do sometimes, but that's about our CytoCure product, beech leaf disease, and how we can help to fix that. One of the points that I want to get back on the CytoCure is how it works on not only for a preventative for the trees and the shrubs and turf. They all think that it's a fungal pathogen that's coming in, and they brace themselves for it by making metabolites and different things to protect themselves. But it also works as bactericide. So this is a nematicide, so it's perfect. And it's really, really safe to use. There are, when they put the designation GRAS, generally regarded as safe, it really is. I mean, it's stuff that's in your hair and your fingernails. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And we're going to go over some of the control products that we have at ICT Organics. These are 25B exempt products, minimum risk pesticides. These are made from, the first two are made from essential oils. The NPP is a chitosan product that's been out for, gosh, 13 years, 14 years. and our glutamate, which is a pre-emergent. Cedar Cure has gotten quite a bit of adoption. We sell more of this than anything else in our product line. This really works well on ticks. This mild winter that we have, ticks are thick everywhere. People are having very tough time with them. One of the things that's showing up, and I saw it last year, I saw my first Lone Star tick. Lone Star tick has a white dot on its back, and it has a virus in its saliva, and the virus enters your bloodstream, and it actually makes you allergic to red meat. It's as if, like, if you were allergic to poison ivy, it happens inside your body. Inflammation is terrible. I've talked to some people that have had it. They still can't eat meat years later. One of my friends who's not with us anymore, Frank Clancy, he's up in Connecticut. He's done some really nice field work for us over the years. But basically, what Cedar Cure does is it coats the body and causes suffocation. All the insects breathe through their body. So if you were to coat them with an essential oil, it kills them. One of the other things that it does is it causes what I call a leaky nervous system. So often I've sprayed it and seen bugs, and they're going around in circles and around in circles and around in circles. And because they're not quite sure what to do, they're leaking out their nervous system. This is safe for people. It's very safe for people. In fact, we get calls all the time saying how much they like it because it smells good. But it's effective on all 4 stages of mosquito. If you were to spray it into a little pond or something where you see a lot of the mosquito larvae, in 30 seconds, they're all stopped. They've stopped moving around because basically it suffocates them. It works really well on fleas, ticks, mosquitoes, very low concentrations, a little over 1/4%. 1% will knock down and kill mosquitoes. You'll see on the label of our Cedar Cure product that we have very small amounts that we use, so it's very cost effective. But it will kill the mosquitoes in the area, but mosquitoes fly around. Excuse me. So they can come back in. Some of the next products that you'll see have repellents in them. So and with Cedar Cure. So not only does it kill all 4 stages of the mosquito, but it also repels them for 30 days. Typically, our guys are going, the service providers are going back every 4 weeks. One guy I talked to, Frank Clancy, he has over 5,000 applications that he does in a year. We're in 23. In 2021, he had 18 recalls, and he does straight Cedar Cure. He had 18 recalls, and he said of those 18, probably 5 or 6 were carpetbaggers. They just didn't want to pay. But he said he could find 4. What he does is he goes out in the turf and drags a blanket that, and what happens is the ticks will hold on to that blanket as it goes by. So you can get a really good idea of how many ticks are in the area with that application. And he said in 4 or 5 cases of those 18, this is 5,000 applications, 4 or 5 cases of the 18, he actually found ticks in the yard. So that's not a bad record. It's a really great product. We can also use it for grub control. And it works, it makes, again, a leaky nervous system, but it also destroys their exoskeleton. But the best time to apply this is at the egg stage and the first instar. That's when they're most vulnerable. If you get into August and September, when they're in the third instar, you often can't even kill them with some of the more deadly chemicals that are out there, just because they're pretty much bulletproof. They've got a thick exoskeleton. They're down in deep in the soil, and that's when you're seeing in August and September, you're seeing the effect on your turf that's out there because they can chomp on some roots. So what we suggest is going out for grub control. As you see them flying around in June and July, they're out there mating and laying eggs. If you look at the life cycle of a beetle, basically they mate, they lay eggs, they go through the instar stages. This time of year, they're sitting in the soil, turning into a beetle, and you've probably seen some beetles in the yards. Then the beetles come out and they mate and they die, and the whole cycle starts over again. So if you've got areas that do have a history of having grubs, you can put this out there. The other thing that Cedar Cure does too is it masks pheromones. So when you're applying it out there, the insects can't smell those or whatever, however they do it. A lot of them do it with the antenna that they've got on the top of their head. They can't see, if you will, the pheromones from other mates. So they don't come into the area. So it works in a couple ways. Not only will it kill eggs but it also masks pheromones really well. So they typically don't come in the area. They'll go somewhere else where they can find a mate. Because if they can't find a mate, then they're not going to come in your area. If you need to water it into the soil profile, you can use a rain event to do that if you don't have irrigation. So you can go out the day before, spray it out, let the rain event get it down into the soil profile. Well, we're going to talk about some other essential oils. Oh, by the way, Cedar Cure is 80%, 79.8 or something, 80% cedarwood oil. Cedarwood oil is not soluble in water. So what we have to do is we have to add some emulsifiers to it so it can be soluble in water. And it goes right into solution. It's really a nice product to work with. Mosquito Cure is also a nice product to work with. This has cedarwood oil as the active ingredient, and then we use other essential oils. Red thyme oil is surprisingly good as a repellent for mosquitoes. Garlic is as well. We've got citronella and rosemary and lemongrass, all great repellents for mosquitoes. So what this does is it goes out and kills it with the Cedar Cure. It'll kill all 4 stages of mosquito. And then we've got the other ones out there in order to repel them. And again, this goes into masking pheromones. So mosquitoes are out when, and it's the process that they use anyway. But garlic is a really good way. Some of the research that I've seen on garlic is that it actually jams the ability for a mosquito to see CO2. So it's basically like jamming a radio signal. So when you spray garlic out there, and a lot of people will take our Cedar Cure and mix it with garlic. It doesn't allow them to see you, but it also masks it so they don't see mates. So what they're typically doing is the females come in and they suck your blood, and then they mate with or have mated with a male, and then they put their eggs into the water that become larvae and then become mosquitoes. So again, what you're doing is you're masking the area. Not only can they not see you inside the property and the CO2 that you're generating, but it's also masking pheromones that these guys use in order to mate. So it does keep them out. If you want to do tick and mosquito control, a lot of landscapers will start out with Cedar Cure early March timeframe. As the mosquitoes start to show up in June, they'll move to Mosquito Cure. but then they also want to do mosquito and tick at the same time. We're only 4% cedarwood oil and mosquito cure. So if you add just a little bit more, you can do tick and mosquito at the same time. So a lot of guys will get orders for a gallon of mosquito cure and then a 16-ounce pint of our cedar cure product. 1 gallon treats 11 acres, so it's a really nice product. We suggest you go out with a backpack blower sprayer. Not only is that the most cost-effective way, but it's the most efficient way. You can get underneath decks. You can, if you think about it, when you're out there doing applications, it's typically during the day, and you don't see a lot of mosquitoes during the day because they're hiding. So they're underneath leaves, they're underneath decks, they're in places where it's cool, where it's wet, and where there's not a lot of sun. So what the backpack blower does, it can get 30 feet up in a tree, it can get under decks, it really moves leaves around. So I really like it, and it's the most cost-effective way. You can get 12 to 15,000 square feet on a property with 3 gallons in a backpack blower. I have a lot of experience with the Steel 450 that I use. I think they're bulletproof. I really like them. It's the most reliable thing with a carburetor that I've found in a long time. And again, people typically go out once a month and do applications. So people like we sell to national programs as well as a lot of local people that do. You'll see they'll run around with a 50-gallon or 100-gallon tank in the back of a pickup truck, which is a cost-effective way to go out. And then they'll mix it in the back of their truck and then go out and spray an application. And people want, I was having this talk with the Lawn Doctor franchise, and they were looking at permethrins that they were using, and they won't use them at all anymore. The resistance that the bugs build up, they just build it up so quickly with that product, is they found that it's almost completely ineffective in the field. Although it's a less toxic way to go, the insects really build up a resistance to it very quickly. With cedar, with essential oils, and what you're doing is there's no way to build a resistance to suffocation. There's no way to build a resistance to their nervous system being broken down. There's no way to build a resistance to not being able to find a mate. So there are 4 or 5 different ways that essential oils work, and the possibility of resistance is very minimal at most. Those are 2 of our best-selling products. Another one, which is going out the door right now, we just had to find another formulator, and I've gotten behind in our product deliveries, but we're just caught up. Is glutamate. It was patented by Nick Christians out at Iowa State University in '92. They've got 20 years of testing data that's there on turf. They do the 10 by 10 squares and test for how many weeds you have and all of that. But they've got all his students for 20 years did it, and then it came off patent in 2012. It came off patent, and but all of that testing data is on. If you go to the Iowa State University site and type in Nick Christians, you'll find all of the data on what's called liquid corn gluten meal. If you're using corn gluten meal right now, the granular, it's 10% nitrogen. The application rate is 20 pounds per 1,000 square feet, which means you're putting out 2 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. I know in Maryland and other states that are along the coast and have the Hudson River and the Chesapeake Bay and all those things, they only allow you to put out so much nitrogen per year. In Maryland, it's 3 pounds per 1,000 square feet, which is about 120 pounds per acre. But you can only put out 3 pounds per year. So if you go out with a granular corn gluten meal, you're putting down 2 pounds early in the spring, typically to control crabgrass, you basically destroyed your nitrogen budget for the year. As that goes away over the next 3 weeks, you've got to put down more nitrogen to keep your color and density, but you can only use 1 pound now through the rest of the year. That includes the fall seeding when you typically want to put a fertilizer down with your seeding and aeration. Ours is 1.5% nitrogen. So you're putting down about 1/4 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet, which now you've got control over your nitrogen budget. What the testing, if you encapsulate the testing for liquid corn gluten meal, they have low 70% control the first year, which doesn't match like a prodiamine or something like that. But in the second year, you start getting low 80% control, high 70% control, then you're mid 80% control in year 3. Now you're starting to meet, although you don't have the efficacy window that like prodiamine does, which is what, 4 months or something. This is 6 to 8 weeks. So your timing is important. But what's interesting is what you're doing and why this happens is that you're destroying the seed pool on the site. So there's less and less seeds in order to germinate. So you're getting better and better control year after year as you use it. The mix rate is 3 to 1. So 1 gallon of glutenate does 4,000 square feet, and that's equivalent to 80 pounds of granular corn gluten meal. Water is just a carrier. So if you're used to putting down, if you're the way that you go out and spray is 2 gallons per 1,000 square feet, because that's the equipment that you have. You can do 2 gallons, but just make sure that there's the 1 quart of glutenate going down per 1,000 square feet. So if you got to use more water, it's basically just a carrier. You just need to make sure that you're getting that 32 ounces of glutenate out per 1,000 square feet. One thing this can also be, we like to have this watered in. So using more water is a great thing because it can be caught on the leaf of the plant. But you want it down in the soil. The seed pool is typically the first inch, half inch that germinates. So you want to get it down in the soil rather than caught up on the leaf of the plant. So if you're using lower rates, try to do it with a rain event that's coming up. But this is a very popular product at this time of the year. Again, timing is you only get about a 6 to 8 week window with that product. So, and what it does is it ulcerates the root of the germinating seed. So basically it takes the root off of the germinating seed. Will it do that with a walnut seed? Probably not. But all of the smaller seeds, especially like our nemesis weeds that are out there, are very small, and it'll ulcerate the weed seed once it germinates. And that's because of the proteins that are in it. Essential 1 has been a general pesticide that we've had out for, 12, 13 years. It's got castor oil in it, which is a very good desiccant. So if you spray it on, say, a caterpillar or a spider, which is any soft-bodied insects that are out there, and you come back about 5 or 10 minutes later, it's like a little crispy critter. It's like a little French fry. It basically sucks all the water out of the insect. So it works really well on soft-bodied insects. I've also seen it with ants. If you were to spray it, you know how ants do that conga line? If you spray it across their conga line, they'll do anything they can to not touch it. They'll go around. It doesn't matter how far they have to go, they'll go around it. We did, initially when this came out, we did some studies down in Florida with Florida State University, and they were interested how it would work with the fire ants that they have down there. And what we found was they hated it so much that they left the area. It didn't kill the hive, it didn't kill everybody, but what it did is they disliked being in that area so much that they basically picked up and left. So the neighbors got all the problems instead of them. But it's got cedarwood oil in it as our active ingredient. It's got garlic in it, so it can be used as a mosquito product. It's also got white pepper in it. We use that for browsers like rabbits and deer. They don't like that white pepper on stuff. So if somebody's asking you for, hey, just a general pesticide, this is actually a very good pesticide to use. It's very safe. People ask us all the time, when can I go back out? That's when it's dried. We have had 1 or 2 complaints, and it's from the cedar cure of dog paws when it's wet, that they've let their dogs out and the paws get sensitive. It doesn't burn them, but they're sensitive. So don't let the animals out. Humans are fine because we're typically wearing shoes and that sort of thing, but wait till the instruction for the customer is, please wait till it dries, which is typically 15 or 20 minutes before you let anybody out on it. And it's not a re-entry thing. It's more of a, let's not take a chance of anybody's paws getting burned. 123 Tree is a biological fertilizer. We use 26 different microorganisms in this mix of bacteria and fungi. It's a fungally dominant mix. That's what trees want. They want a fungally dominant soil. 1 gallon, it's highly concentrated. 1 gallon makes up 126 gallons of mix. It's unlike our compost tea, which is bacterial dominant. This is fungally dominant, and it's highly concentrated. We've gotten really great success over the years for this. Trees don't want nitrogen. If you look at the typical forest landscape, the fungi and bacteria are breaking the leaves down and making it into very low nitrogen environment, fungally dominant soils for trees. So this is a really good fertilizer for trees. We've just shipped big pallet order to one of Barry's good customers. He's been using it for years and years. Part of the tree product is we do a ferment of kelp and fish and humate and micronutrients, and we mix it with the biology, and we keep the pH low. It's typically 3.5, 3.8. Plus we use an organic stabilizer, which keeps it down, and it keeps all the heads down of the fungi and bacteria so they don't grow out in the bottle along with the stuff. But it's really good fertilizer for trees. They really like it, trees and shrubs. Hydra seeds, this is typically used in places where you can't fail, sides of hills. You need quick germination. This is a great product to use. It accelerates your germination. It coats all the good guys get on to the root first. So you've got guys that are eating the exudates of the plants and giving back all of the nutrients that it's mining in the soil. And then we've got our instant compost tea, which is the product that we started, the ICT Organics, and that's what ICT stands for, instant compost tea. It's bacterial dominant. We use the same sort of microorganisms in this product. And there's no brewing with this. We actually have people call and say, hey, what happened to my turf? If you brew it, what happens is that the bacteria are so alive that when you spray it out, it literally sucks all of the nutrients out of the soil and turns the grass white. So there's no brewing with this. This is just a mix and spray type of thing. It comes in a 3-part mix. You've got a dechlorinator for if you're using city water, you don't want to put microbes into city water because it's got bleach in it or whatever else they happen to use. And then it's got 1 bottle with microbes, and then another is that same ferment that we do of kelp and fish and humates. One carton treats 90,000 square feet. Again, there's no brewing with this. And there are a couple tips. Essential oils. Don't apply them when the daytime temperatures are over 85. So you don't go out in August at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and spray. Some of the things that'll happen, you'll definitely get spotting on shrubs and your turf and trees. You may get wilting, you may get death. Basically what happens is when you spray essential oils on it, you've coated it. And if it's already water stressed or heat stressed, you basically put it in a plastic bag and you're going to stress it out even more. So you can apply in the morning. We have a golf course super that we work with nearby. We went out one day when it was supposed to be 105, but we went out in the morning and it was about 74, 75 degrees and sprayed everything. We sprayed annuals, we sprayed trees, we sprayed, and it got over to 105. We didn't see any wilting. We didn't see any problems with it. So you can go out in the morning is probably the best time. In the evening, sometimes, especially in the summer, it's hard to get it under 80 degrees some nights. So, but you can go out in the morning and spray it. Just don't go out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in August and spray essential oils, any essential oil. Again, glutenate, water is a carrier. The profile on glutenate is that it's almost all protein. It's like 97% protein. So if you spray it on a sidewalk or siding on a house, I don't know if you've ever been egged in your car, but once that stuff dries, it's really hard to get off. So, so rinse off the glutenate on the sidewalks and sidings before you leave, because it will coat it and it won't look great. Again, timing is critical with the pre-emergence. We've got a 6 to 8 week window, unlike prodiamine, which is, what is it, Barry? 4 months?
Yeah, about that. Yep.
Yeah, like 4 months. So this is more like a month and a half, 2 months. So your timing is critical if you're looking for crabgrass. I'm noticing here in Maryland, in the real hot places, like right next to the house, we're starting to get crabgrass germination. It hasn't started out in the turf yet. I thought we were going to have a really hot spring, a really early spring, but it got cold and wet and cold again. So looks like it's a little later spring or a typical spring. But timing is critical in pre-emergence. There's an old wives' tale out there that you're supposed to put it out when the forsythia blooms. That's typically in March. When, if your nemesis is crabgrass, you're going to miss the window. It's going to be gone from the site before the crabgrass ever starts to germinate. So just be thinking about what your weed nemesis is and when you should probably be putting it down. Crabgrass doesn't like to germinate until the soil gets above 55. USDA has some great, they've got temperature probes all over the country, tens of thousands of them. And that's for the farming community. So they know when to plant their soybeans or whatever, because those things don't germinate until a certain soil temperature. So you can go onto the USDA site and look up soil temperatures. You can type in your zip code and they'll actually show you what your current temperature is in the soil. And they give a 1 inch, a 2 inch, I think a 4 inch, and an 8 inch or something. So that's useful information. And that's about almost the end of our, this is a picture that a landscaper sent us years ago using our compost tea. He was doing a retaining wall and he got, I think that goes up to 14, I think they were 14, 15 inch roots. But once you get organics going and you get soil health going, the roots just go into the ground. I mean, think about the drought resistance of something like this, where the soils are, the roots are that far down in the soil. I mean, that's drought resistance. This area, he was saying, was so green. He was just surprised how green it was in August when they were putting this in, because everybody else was browning out. But that's one of the things that you'll see in organic care is that you're taking care of the soil, and that it can weather these events that go on, and they can recover from them much easier. But the next frontier is under your feet. That's a golf course they sent me that uses our compost tea. We also are in the World Series, the baseball youth World Series fields that are up in Pennsylvania. Does anybody have any questions, or is it New York? I forget.
Well, I have some comments.
Okay, is that Whit?
Oh, wait, no, this is Barry.
Oh, Barry, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Whit, I know you're there. Hi. So, like you said at the start, we've been working together for what, 15, 17 years or something like that. And it has been a great experience, not just working with you, but the results that your products get. And the fact that they're minimum risk pesticides just adds so much to the equation. You know, ICT products are some of our best sellers from all over the country. It works.
Yeah, we have worked together a long time. We've sat behind a counter at a lot of those shows.
Yeah. Yep. So again, thank you, Bill. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. This is recorded. And just so you know, next week we have, let me pull up the schedule. Steve Retke from Rutgers is going to talk about IPM. Known Steve for quite a few years. He's been a mentor of mine, and he's going to share a lot of good information. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate you coming in, and we will see you next week.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Bill.
Bill.
Okay,
Thank
appreciate it.
you. Thank you very much.
Take care, Whit.